If you are like me, older than dirt, you have this deep, extremely nostalgic place in your heart for Infocom's text adventures. Before there were any actual graphical computer stuff, there was Zork, the great underground empire. Born in MIT in the late 70s by MIT students, Tim Anderson, Mark Blanc, Bruce Daniels, and Dave Liebling, it was developed for a PDP-10 mainframe. But I digress. The history of Zork and other Infocom games are well documented, so instead of rehashing that, let's look at setting up your Atari ST or other system to allow you to easily launch any of the adventures. I'll also cover a couple of tips during gameplay. Since I don't have my real ST hardware anymore, I'll be using the STeem emulator to test each setup. But the same settings can be used on the Hatari emulator as well. And before we get into emulator settings, let's look how I've already set up my desktop with icons that link to each of the Infocom games. For this, you should know how to install a desktop icon for an ST executable. If you don't, I have a separate video that covers that. In addition, I have a video on how I create hard drive folders for each category of software. That means I don't have to set up a boot manager program that switches between system settings and programs file. I just boot to a particular configuration that accesses that hard drive folder, and boom, I'm up and running. So in this case, each game is stored in an Infocom subdirectory on my PC's hard drive, and then each one in their own folder. That way I can keep the game programs and their data files separately. Also, later on, you'll see that I keep the game saves in the same directory as the actual game. And it keeps this old brain from getting too confused. So let's first talk about your system setup. Since the first Infocom games were released early in the ST release cycle, we'll start with an ST-FM and 512K of memory. We'll also use a color monitor first, switching to the high-resolution monitor later. Next, we're going to use TOS 1.02 for the beginning operating system version. So here we go. The first thing you'll notice is that in low resolution, I only have desktop space for about 12 icons. You can use a file window instead and browse to the game you want, but I like this when we're in a higher resolution and I can see all the games in one shot. Then it's like browsing a video service where you can look around and see which movie you want to watch tonight. Instead, I can decide which Infocom game I'm going to get frustrated with. Okay, now that we're in, let's run a game. I've ranked them in alphabetical order, so A Mind Forever Voyaging is my first selection. It happens to be a great demo to check requirements because, as you can see, it won't run in low resolution. So that's a quick fail here. Running a different game, Ballyhoo, it runs in low resolution, but it runs out of screen space and gives you a prompt of more. Then you have to press a space bar to see the rest of that response. And then the top part of the response scrolls up off the screen. So let's change our ST to medium resolution and rerun Ballyhoo. Now it displays the entire narrative. Testing some other games, we find that they mostly run fine. But what about readability? A quick screenshot of a game at low, medium, and high reveals that low resolution, even though it works, is a poor choice as it eats up a lot of screen real estate. Checking with medium and high resolution lets us know that either is fine. Lastly, checking high resolution, we find that desktop can now handle icons for each of the Infocom titles. That, along with the text readability, gives us a great game experience. To be fair, there are a few games that will still require an extra key or so, even in high resolution. So here's a few tips to enjoy your Infocom experience. For the first one, I highly recommend you plan your saves in advance. First, with this multi-game setup, I recommend storing all your saves in the same directory as the game you were playing. The reason for this one is pretty obvious. As far as the naming convention, I recommend starting with 3 numerical digits to allow the system to sort them for you. 001 plus 5 alpha digits to describe the actual place in the game. For example, for Zork 1, 007 SCEPT tells me when in the order it was saved, but it also indicates it's when I found the scepter, or maybe when I put it in the trophy case. As long as you are consistent, a naming convention like this should help you resume your game if you have to stop and come back to it later. When you arrive in a new location, most of the Infocom games give you a nice description of where you just arrived and any pertinent facts, usually about entrances and exits with compass-like directions for them. In addition, a list of items, especially treasures, laying there, maybe weapons and adversaries as well. But there may also be verbal clues. One of the most famous is in Zork 1 when you arrive under a certain tree. It tells you that there's a particularly large tree with low branches. The low branches are just the thing the adventurer would like to climb. And if you climb that tree, you'll find a nest. And in that nest, you'll find a jewel-encrusted egg. So descriptions can matter. But what happens when you leave a place and come back to it? You just get a simple title of the place. No embellishments. You can fix that by turning on verbose mode. Just type the word verbose, and from then on, anywhere you go in a game, you'll get a complete description of that place. It can be a little excessive at times, so you can return to normal descriptions by typing brief. Or instead, you can ask for a complete description of an already visited place by just typing look when you're there. The only other status here you should be aware of is that you can only carry a certain number of items. Their combined number, weight, or bulk will determine how much you can carry. So it's important you go back and store items or simply drop them once they're used. In Zork 1, it's the trophy case in the house's living room. Sometimes you can simply put one inside of another, allowing you to carry both of them. In fact, in Zork 2, you can't directly store items in a location like the trophy case. You must put items into containers that you find, such as a teapot or bucket. And as in Zork 1, weight also matters. So don't keep things that you won't need again. In Zork 1, you can store most in the trophy case, but also in Zork 1, once you kill the troll with a sword, you won't need it again. To kill the thief later, you'll be using a nasty knife from the kitchen attic. But what about tracking down all those Infocom text adventures? Well, there's a lot of different places to look. Some are pretty complete, but some are lacking many titles. So here's a list of sites you may be interested in. But if you want to skip near the end, I'll show the ultimate location for any Atari software, let alone just the Infocom titles. First, Atari Mania, a great site that has individual sections for each Atari system divided into software categories. You can just drill down and search to whatever you're trying to find, and you get a dedicated page listing facts about the software and hopefully a download. The reason I say hopefully, some titles are missing their quote-unquote dump. You can search for an individual title or Infocom, but since Infocom isn't a part of the actual title, nothing shows up. If you switch to the site's advanced search, we can scroll down the publisher's list and find Infocom. Using that, we get a nice discrete list of Infocom's titles. The problem is they don't have downloads for each and every title. You can see here that the icon on the far right shows the status of the download, and there are quite a few red icons. If your title you want displays that, you're not going to get your files here. But if the game you want has a yellow icon, click on the name and you get to its page. Once there, you'll see the download link near the bottom. Click on that and your download should start. I store all of mine in my collection subfolder in my Atari directory. Moving on, the next site is myabandonware.com. I only include this site to warn you about it. If you are not careful, you may get a pop-up that looks like I'm not a robot verification. Do not click on it. It will install a scare pop-up on your system. You are not infected. It's just trying to make you click on a repair link. If you still want to proceed, be very careful to bypass that. Once you're on the software listing page, you can search using the top right search box. But don't use Infocom. You'll have to use the game title, or just Atari ST. Also be aware that the site puts ad squares in the middle of your results. Only the ones with blue text underneath actually link to a game's page. Once you click on it, the page will show you some general info. Scroll down to see if it has the download buttons for the ST or just an ad to buy the game elsewhere. GOG, for example. Also, this is a good site for other than ST people because it has different versions for each system. Because of the ads and the virus pop-up, I have not included a link to this site. Another site is eblong.com. It houses the obsessively complete Infocom archive. Warning, this is only for those more techy. It uses the game libraries with the source files and some variations for the different systems. Use this site only if you have the technical experience to extract and set up the files. The next site, planetemu.net, has software for all game consoles, computers, and even arcade emulators like MAME. And there is a search function, but if you click on Research, you'll get a pop-up where you can enter in Infocom. The results will give you all the Infocom titles, but they'll be starting with the Amiga versions. Clicking on the next page, you'll eventually move on to the Amstrad CPC versions. Instead, on the main page, just scroll down in the right column and you'll see a list of computer types. Click on ST, or if you're using a different system, use that. And you'll get a list of software separated by type: applications, utilities, games, etc. Some game magazines as well. You also see them separated by disk type: ST, STX, etc. By the way, there are no STX formats that contain Infocom games. So let's search for the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by clicking on the red H at the top. Scrolling down, we find Hitchhikers. Going a little bit further, Hollywood Hijinks is listed as well. But back up to Hitchhikers, we find several disc versions that were released by different sources. Choose the one you trust the most and click on the title. You should get a detailed page with a download link. Click on that link and you should get a prompt from your browser. Choose your master storage location and let it finish. Lastly, the most complete listing and one that is easiest to download and install, the Internet Archive, of course. I've included a link to the ST game zip files. There are two versions, one with the ST files and one with STX files. The STX download doesn't have any Infocom titles, but as long as you're there, you might want to download it anyways. The ST game download has the Infocom titles. Another note is that the zip file is 3.2 gigabytes. Depending upon your system and network speeds, it takes a while to download. Also, the Internet Archive limits your speed as well. Once you have it downloaded, then all you have to do is extract it in individual folders and you can access them. But there are 44,000 files and 13,000 folders. It extracts to 36 gigabyte, so you're going to need some space. It's so large that using Windows Explorer cannot handle it and throws an error trying to extract it. Instead, you need to use a third-party extraction utility. I used Universal Zip and it worked fine. So, after you have your files, you can organize the games into your hard drive's game folder, and then the Infocom folder, and then separate each into their own directory. Once that's done, all you have to do is return to your desktop and link each one of the executable files to an icon. So that's about it for the system configuration and high-level tip guide. Hopefully, once you have it all set up, you can quickly get to that day's Infocom game up and running, and no wasting time before you get to the important job: adventuring.
If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and hit the reminder bell to be notified of any new videos. Additionally, you can find me on Reddit, Facebook, X, and my website. The links are in the description of this video.